The world watched closely as top US and Russian officials met in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This meeting was not just another diplomatic engagement, it was a pivotal moment that could reshape the geopolitical landscape. This high-stakes meeting marked a significant development in US-Russia relations. The handshake between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov symbolized a tentative step towards dialogue and potential reconciliation. It was the first such encounter since the outbreak of the Ukraine war in early 2022. The conflict has caused immense suffering and geopolitical instability, making this meeting all the more critical. The meeting aimed to explore avenues for peace and cooperation amid heightened global tensions. Both sides were keen to find common ground, despite their many differences and the complex history between the two nations. The choice of Riyadh as the venue for these crucial talks added another layer of intrigue to the event. Saudi Arabia's role as host underscored its growing influence in international diplomacy. Saudi Arabia, a key player in the Middle East, has maintained ties with both the US and Russia. This unique position allowed it to facilitate discussions that might have been impossible elsewhere. This neutrality positioned the kingdom as a potential mediator in the ongoing conflict. The Saudi leadership's diplomatic acumen was on full display as they navigated the delicate balance between the two superpowers. The meeting, however, was not without its critics. Protests erupted, and critical headlines questioned the legitimacy and potential outcomes of the talks. The absence of Ukrainian representation raised eyebrows and fueled concerns about potential sidelining. Many wondered how effective any agreement could be without Ukraine's direct involvement. Ukraine, at the heart of the conflict, expressed its displeasure at being excluded from the negotiating table. President Zelensky and other officials voiced their frustration, emphasizing that any lasting peace must include Ukraine's active participation. The U.S. delegation was led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a seasoned politician known for his strong stance on international relations and his influential role in shaping U.S. foreign policy. As a prominent figure in the Trump administration, Rubio's leadership was crucial in navigating the complex dynamics of the negotiations. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff joined Secretary Rubio in representing U.S. interests. Waltz, with his extensive military background, brought a strategic perspective, while Witkoff's experience in diplomacy added a nuanced approach to the discussions. On the Russian side, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spearheaded the delegation. Lavrov, a veteran diplomat, is well-versed in international negotiations and has been a key player in Russia's foreign policy for years. He was accompanied by Yuri Ushakov, a close foreign policy advisor to President Putin. Ushakov's deep understanding of geopolitical strategies and his close ties to the Kremlin made him an indispensable part of the Russian delegation. Despite the deep division stemming from the Ukraine war, both sides managed to find common ground on several key issues. This was a significant achievement considering the heightened tensions and the complex geopolitical landscape. Restoring diplomatic ties, which had been severely strained since the war began, emerged as a priority. Both delegations recognized the importance of open communication channels in preventing further escalation and fostering mutual understanding. Both sides agreed to work towards increasing embassy staffing, a step towards rebuilding diplomatic bridges. This move was seen as a positive signal, indicating a willingness to engage in more direct and frequent dialogue. Another point of convergence was the establishment of a high-level team dedicated to supporting Ukraine peace talks. This team would be tasked with facilitating dialogue between conflicting parties and exploring potential pathways to peace. This initiative signaled a shared desire, at least in principle, to find a negotiated settlement to the protracted conflict. It underscored the commitment of both nations to work towards a peaceful resolution, despite their differences. Further demonstrating a willingness to explore avenues for cooperation, both delegations agreed to explore closer economic ties. This included discussions on trade agreements, investment opportunities, and collaborative projects that could benefit both economies. The Riyadh meeting underscored a notable shift in U.S. foreign policy under President Trump's second term. The Trump administration has adopted a more open and engaging approach towards Russia, a stark contrast to the more confrontational stance of the previous Biden administration. This policy shift, however, has generated mixed reactions both domestically and internationally. Some see it as a pragmatic approach to ease tensions with a major power. Critics, however, argue that it risks emboldening Russia and undermining U.S. leadership on the global stage. The Biden administration's focus on multilateralism and alliances has given way to a more transactional approach. This shift has left some European allies feeling uneasy about U.S. commitment to NATO and the security architecture of Europe. One of the most contentious aspects of the Riyadh meeting was the conspicuous absence of Ukrainian representatives. This exclusion fueled concerns that any agreement reached without Kyiv's direct involvement would be unsustainable and ultimately detrimental to Ukraine's interests. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky voiced his displeasure, asserting that Ukraine would not be bound by any agreement made without its participation. He stressed that Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity are non-negotiable. European allies, particularly those bordering Russia, echoed Ukraine's concerns. The absence of a unified Western front at the Riyadh talks raised questions about the cohesiveness of the transatlantic alliance in the face of Russian aggression. Section 5. The looming shadow of sanctions. The issue of sanctions, a major point of contention between the West and Russia, cast a long shadow over the Riyadh talks. These discussions were crucial, as they aimed to address the geopolitical tensions that have been escalating for years. The United States and its allies have imposed unprecedented sanctions on Russia since its invasion of Ukraine. These measures were designed to cripple the Russian economy and force a change in its aggressive policies. These sanctions have targeted key sectors of the Russian economy, including finance, energy, and defense. The impact has been significant, causing economic strain and limiting Russia's ability to fund its military operations. Secretary Rubio acknowledged that any lasting agreement would require addressing the issue of sanctions. He emphasized the importance of a balanced approach that considers both security concerns and economic realities. However, he maintained that sanctions relief would be contingent on Russia demonstrating concrete steps towards de-escalation and respecting Ukraine's sovereignty. This stance reflects the broader international consensus on the need for accountability. The European Union, a key player in the sanctions regime against Russia, was notably absent from the Riyadh talks. Their absence was felt deeply, as the EU's role is critical in maintaining the pressure on Russia. This absence raised questions about the feasibility of reaching a comprehensive agreement without the EU's involvement. The path forward remains uncertain, with many wondering how effective any resolution can be without the full participation of all major stakeholders. Section 6. Towards a Trump-Putin summit? The Riyadh meeting fueled speculation about a potential summit between President Trump and President Putin. While no concrete plans have been announced, the meeting in Saudi Arabia was widely seen as laying the groundwork for such a high-level encounter. A Trump-Putin summit, if materialized, would carry immense symbolic and geopolitical weight. It would signal a thawing of relations between the two superpowers after years of heightened tensions. However, such a summit would also be fraught with risks. Critics argue that a summit without concrete deliverables and a clear commitment from Russia to change course in Ukraine would be counterproductive. They fear that it would grant Russia a propaganda victory and embolden its assertive behavior. Section 7. Saudi Arabia's diplomatic maneuver. By hosting the US-Russia talks, Saudi Arabia positioned itself as a key diplomatic player on the global stage. The kingdom has walked a delicate tightrope since the outbreak of the Ukraine war, maintaining ties with both sides of the conflict. This neutrality enabled Saudi Arabia to play the role of mediator, facilitating dialogue between two adversaries. The kingdom's efforts to broker peace in Ukraine follow its previous involvement in prisoner exchanges and its hosting of President Zelensky in 2023. The diplomatic overture aligns with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's vision to elevate Saudi Arabia's global standing. The kingdom aspires to be seen as a responsible actor and a bridge builder in a fractured international order. Section 8. Uncertain implications for the Ukraine war. The impact of the Riyadh meeting on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine remains uncertain. While the meeting signaled a willingness to engage in dialogue, it did not produce any concrete breakthroughs or a ceasefire agreement. The fighting in Ukraine continues, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The humanitarian toll of the war continues to mount, with millions displaced from their homes and cities reduced to rubble. The lack of a clear path towards peace raises concerns that the conflict could escalate further, drawing in other regional and global powers. The specter of a wider war, potentially even a nuclear confrontation, continues to haunt the international community. Section 9. A fragile path forward. The Riyadh meeting, while not a game-changer, represents a tentative step towards dialogue and diplomacy in a deeply divided world. It underscores the importance of engagement, even with adversaries, in seeking peaceful resolutions to complex global challenges. However, the path forward remains fraught with obstacles. Deep mistrust, conflicting interests, and the ongoing violence in Ukraine pose significant challenges to any meaningful progress towards peace. The international community must remain vigilant in holding all parties accountable for their actions and upholding international law. Only through sustained diplomatic efforts coupled with a firm commitment to a rules-based international order can lasting peace be achieved.